everyone, it's Emily here with Bossed Up, and welcome to today's Career Crush Q&A. Every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern, I get to sit down with a fantastic boss woman out there who's got a really incredible career path and her journey that she wants to share with us. Now, career crushes are all about people who have crafted careers with passion and purpose, which feeds right into our mission here at Bossed Up, which is to help you craft a career, craft a happy, healthy, and sustainable career path. So I want to welcome each and every one of you to today's broadcast. We're going to be interviewing the fantastic Hannah Lozon, who's tuning in today from the University of Michigan. Hannah, thank you so much for being here. Hannah is a talent management professional who's a passionate social justice advocate working on higher education and creating communities that are inclusive, while dismantling systems of privilege, which I know we're big fans of here at Bossed Up, and I just can't wait to hear more. Before we go any further though, a couple of housekeeping things of note. We want to hear your questions so that Hannah and I can respond in real time. I got Twitter up on the side here, so if I'm looking off to the side of the camera, that is why. You can tweet at us at BossedUpORG or at Hannah Lozon, L-O-Z-O-N, and that's Hannah with an H at the end. And we are also tweeting with that hashtag Career Crush, which we use every Wednesday. And you can actually go back and see all the interviews that we have. So Hannah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Emily. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about, first and foremost, what is your job, right? What is it that you're doing right now at the University of Michigan? And if you could tell us a little bit about the most immediate career transition that landed you there. We'd love to learn more about your role and how you got there.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, Emily. So my role here at U of M, I work specifically for the housing department, where we house all of the students in our residence halls and apartments on campus. We have almost 12,000 students who live with us, so that's larger than many colleges and universities as a whole. I oversee all of the student staff selection, training, and recruitment efforts that we have here, which is over 550 student staff across 6 different positions. So it's a lot to manage.
Yeah.
And it's a relatively new position for the department. We're just entering the 2nd year. I'm the inaugural person in the role. So for me, I got to come home. Michigan is my alma mater where I did my undergraduate work. So in many ways, this is a homecoming of epic proportions, which I'll be happy to talk more about throughout our time together. And for me, before I came here to Ann Arbor, I was down in Tucson, Arizona, working at the University of Arizona, where I served as the coordinator of social justice education for the Department of Residence Life there. So specifically doing diversity, inclusion, and social justice education efforts for the housing department there. Had a brief stint where I got to help run the Women's Resource Center while the director was away on leave. That was absolutely incredible and amazing. So really being able to fuse my passion and understanding of systems of privilege, power, and control that prevent us from leaving our full humanity, and bring that into a talent management perspective where we bring ourselves to work every day. So that's really where I'm able to fuse those 2 passion areas.
That's fantastic. I want to back up for a second and ask what might be a sort of a basic question, so to speak. But what does campus housing have to do with privilege, right? What does campus housing have to do with social justice? And I feel like so many of us, especially in the Bossed Up community, have at one point found ourselves in a college program, and it's such an on-ramp to reality, right? It's this intermediary between a very sheltered, perhaps, upbringing, and all of us from across the country coming together on a physical campus, right, and learning how to live together. So this might be a big question. This might be something you could probably talk about for forever. But what do the 2 things have to do with one another? How does housing on college campuses relate to social justice?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think if we think about social justice, we're really talking in multiple levels. We're talking those interactions we have at an individual level between people, at an institutional level. So that's going to be things like education, government, schools, media, housing. And then really looking at things from a cultural level, and all of those levels intersect with each other at all times. So if we think about university housing, here at Michigan, we house about 98% of our first year population. So the majority of our first year students coming to Michigan are living with us on campus. And so for us, where you where you lay your head at night. It has the opportunity to just be a room that you live in, or that is a place that can feel like home, where you can get support, where you can have access to professional and student staff and resources in education and programming more than anywhere else. There's a lot of research across the country that students who live in the residence halls or apartments, their GPAs are higher, their retention is higher, their graduation rates are higher. And so specifically, really looking at how do we make sure that our staff are creating spaces where students feel they can bring their whole selves every day and show up authentically in a place that is supposed to be their home while they are away from home.
I love that. I almost hear some of that happening in the business space as well, right? Although I don't know if it's right or wrong, but the amount of hours that American workers are simply putting in the office these days, I think a lot of employers are also saying, and taking this humanist approach like you are, of saying, this is a place where I want you to bring your full self to the table. Easier said than done as a talent management professional. I'm sure you know the role there, but I love that idea. I love that message. And I also have to say that I think college students coming together means diversity in and of itself, right? Exactly. Cool.
Exactly. And I think the other thing to know, that it's so important when you touched on the humanistic approach, because for our staff, both students and our professional staff, we have both folks who are at bachelor's level working professionally as well as master's level. And not everyone, but most people live where they work. So there is no separation. There is no commute home where you can kind of distance yourself from the stress that can come day to day. So it really is, how do we have a balance to help our staff be, make sure they take care of themselves, but be the best student advocates and supports they can.
Great, Hannah. What a microcosm for everything that we're trying to do here at Bossed Up, because I think nowadays, especially with digital technology, it's harder and harder to find that identity separation between work and life, and how we manage that is actually really critical to our well-being as human beings, and productivity and creativity and all that good stuff that the research supports. So I'm fascinated by how that's being executed on the university level. I'm glad to hear that there are boss ladies like you at the helm. So I have to ask, a lot of our community members are women navigating career transition. And I know that you've got a career transition that landed you at this role that is interesting, right? Is something that we should talk more about. So can you share a little bit about how you found yourself leaving your last job to end up coming home, right, for this grand homecoming at the end?
I'm really happy to share that story. And I actually will need to start here at my time at Michigan and just do a quick overview of my story to make it all make sense. So I am from the great state of Michigan. I'm from about 45 minutes away from Ann Arbor. And when I came here, I distinctly remember being on campus and had always cared about treating other people well. I was that person in high school or growing up who would stand up for others, kind of bystander intervention stuff, but didn't have any real language or understanding that could be something larger than just being a good human being. And so I remember coming to campus, and it was when the Grutter v. Bollinger affirmative action case was at the Supreme Court. So where our university was talking about it at a national level about issues of affirmative action and inclusion, specifically for students of color and students of other marginalized identities. And so I remember walking to first year convocation. This is like week 1 on campus, Emily. And I remember refusing to sign a support affirmative action petition because I remember the words coming out of my mouth. That's reverse racism. That is where I was at that time. But it was through my time, and I came to Michigan to be a doctor, me and half the first year class. I was doing stem cell research at the medical school, and just wasn't finding a click.
Sure.
Was doing fine in classes, but it wasn't the passion. And so found the field of student affairs, like many of us do, by connecting with other student affairs professionals on campus who were our supervisors or mentors. And so I was like, oh, I can do this for a living. And so found specifically, but it was that culmination of a class I had to take as an RA here that our students, our RAs, our diversity peer educators, and our peer academic success specialists still have to take today. And that is called Applied Liberal Arts 421. We call it staff class. And it's really about creating inclusive communities. I thought I was going to learn how to do duty and bulletin boards, but it's about how do we facilitate diverse interactions across identity, recognizing that even when we're just putting on a movie night or a pancake dinner, right, there are human interactions in that space. And so that class really transformed the entire course of my life. I recognized I had an interest, a passion in social justice, and so wanting to do work on myself recognizing that I bring lots of privileged identities into a space as a white person, as a person with from a high economic background, who was mostly able-bodied, et cetera, heterosexual, continuing on. And so recognized I needed to do that work on myself before I could ever work with students. Went to a graduate program in higher education, which really had that focus. And the very first book I had to read, thanks to one of my professors, Dr. Kathleen Manning, was Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. And it was really about doing with students rather than for them, that we all have our own sense of agency, and sometimes that systems of oppression prevent us from being able to tap into that agency.
Right.
And so did that wonderful work there. That led me to the University of Arizona, where I was a community director, which running a residence hall, and then moved into the social justice education role. Did that for about 5 years and really got to build a program with the help of my colleagues around what does it mean to create spaces where people feel that they can be whole and honest about who they are all of the time.
Wow.
And it was a lot of work. There was a lot of missteps along the way, but really creating spaces where people can say, this is who I am, and I'm going to bring it to the table. And so recognize I did that work for five years. I had a semester where I went over and I ran the Women's Resource Center while the director was away on leave, which was really, really awesome that the university was able to support her and support my career growth.
Right.
And that opportunity to connect with other women, which was just an absolutely amazing experience. And then found, after doing a job search and trying to come back to the Midwest, that it took a while. That job search took a while, especially as someone with a lot of privilege who was desiring to do either HR work or diversity and social justice work. And so I got to the end of my time at Arizona and I just realized I had tapped out in the role. I could not learn anymore. And there were going to be some changes made to the role that I did not feel I would be the best person to serve the department anymore in that space. So I made the decision to leave without a job.
Scary decision, right?
Very scary decision. And I think for me, I was able to make it recognizing I am partnered. My partner makes the majority of our income. So I had that financial security. But after talking it through with my mentors, and I was like, is this just going way off the deep end? And they said, no. Every single one of them, Emily, said, I left without a job. And I was like, why is no one talking about this?
Right.
And so it was actually just just a week or so after I left that I had been interviewing and I received the offer for my current position. And I've been here ever since.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I think, acknowledging the process that does go into that process is important, right? Like being able to take a step back from that job without sure footing up ahead, but also for those of us who are tuning in today feeling like, oh my gosh, can I please bounce out of this job? This is a toxic work environment that is impeding my ability to be personally sustainable. What I always like to say to people, and I'd be curious to hear what your advice would be coming from your perspective, is to really get clear on what complete and utter failure would actually look like, right? Because failure in this abstract sense can be very scary, but when we get clear on what it would actually look like to fall flat on your face and what you would do to overcome it, then it becomes a lot less scary. And one of my mentors said, as I polished up my business plan and was all ready to start Bossed Up, but just didn't know when I would be given permission to start my business, right? Or given permission to pour my whole time and energy into that. She said to me, well, what would it look like to fail? What would it look like if you completely bottomed out, and how would you deal? And at that point, your problem-solving brain can get to action, and all that, worrying that goes on in there of just what ifs become sort of silenced, and you can move on and move forward. But for those of us who are tuning in, who are feeling like, man, I'm ready for a career change. I don't want to just blindly leap, but what do I do if this is really not an opportunity for me to grow any further? I'd be curious. I mean, I know it varies situation to situation, but what would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, so similarly, I found myself at a point, I remember during my time at Arizona, where I was just going through some really, really hard health issues that were having a significant impact on my work, on my mental health, on my ability to be present and to be a good partner and to receive what I needed from my partner. My partner is also a merchant sailor and so is gone 6 to 8 months a year. And so so how we get support from one another looks very different over a spotty internet connection.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And so, but that was a real a real turning point in my life where I just was not okay. I mean, I was absolutely at the point of burnout, both with work and personally, and really remember it feeling like I was just making mistakes left and right in every. I mean, I think I really bottomed out and I had to take control of the reins. And I stopped working with medical practitioners and I started working with naturopathic doctors who really were like, this is actually what's going on. Your hormones are off. This is why you're not dealing with stress well, or your anxiety was really high. You have an allergy to this food and it's causing X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh my gosh, like why had no one told me this?
Yeah.
Because I had been doing all of this self-blame and shame that it's my fault. And as my doctor said, she said, you have to be the CEO of your health.
Yeah.
She goes, I can't do that for you. So, but what that taught me, Emily, is that I really only, every single choice that I make are to support two things in my life. And that is to be healthy and to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's every career choice, whether I decide I'm going to argue for something at work, like take up the sword, die on this sword or not. With my partner, with family, with friends, etc., or to support one of those two choices. And that has been the fundamental shift for me. And that really got me to the point at Arizona where I was like, I love this place. I love my colleagues, but it's time to go home. And I will figure it out on the back end.
I love it. It reminds me of something we like to say at Bossed Up Boot Camp, our training program for women navigating career transition. And that's, you have to protect your happipiness like it's your job.
Yes.
Right? Like, of course, we all have our job. And yes, we have relationships to which we are obliged as well. But you know who else we're obliged to? Ourselves, right? Like our health, our happiness, it matters. And being able to have it all comes back to self-worth. The more writing and work I do on this with people, the more I realize that it all stems from self-worth. And self-worth is sort of part and parcel with who you surround yourself with, right? Like if you have a steady sense of agency and you're acknowledging the systems, as you mentioned, of oppression or privilege that can sometimes prevent you from tapping into your own power, right? That is a really great awakening point to get to in your life. And I think all of us come to that at different choice moments, sometimes really hard choice moments. But thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like I could preach here all day with you. You know, you were like, yeah, girl, take care of yourself. You got to. But it's such a good point. And it hammered home in the New York Times this week with an article I just posted through Bossed Up's Facebook page about a 26-year-old who had a stroke that was probably related to overwork and stress, although the doctors can't draw a perfect linear line to that. But just acknowledging that your job at the end of the day is for you, right? And even if you're in the nonprofit sector, even if you are doing cause-oriented work for others, you can't do very much if you're burnt out, right? You're not going to be as good over the long term. So
absolutely, Emily. And I think the thing that's really resonating as we think about that, I think, of course, that shows up differently for every person. And if we think about women and our intersectional identities, how that looks for me as a white woman who has some financial security is, and these were the critiques that when Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In came out.
Sure.
That looks very different for someone who is not able to take that leap, who is dealing not only with sexist oppression and patriarchy day to day, but the intersections with racism, with homophobia, with ableism, et cetera. And so really I think the other thing that's been so important to me over my time and over my career is really recognizing that it is so important to find your people.
Yeah.
Find your people who you can talk and process things through with, find that person, whether it's at work, at home, with friends, and just someone and people who can say what you are experiencing is it's not necessarily unique to you, because I think that's the thing we especially as women do.
Yeah.
It's no one else has ever had this experience because we're not supposed to talk about it. We're just supposed to do it. And we're supposed to be in control all of the time and take care of everybody else.
Right. I mean, we get those messages everywhere we turn, right? It's just part of the experience. I'm fascinated. So I have to ask, because I know time is ticking away, what other lessons have you picked up along the way? Or what, I think through your work with others and through your own journey in your own career, coming home and, traveling and the advanced education, what learned along the way that you think might be relevant for our audience today, Hannah?
Yeah, thank you for that question. As I was thinking and preparing for today, I thought of a couple of lessons that have been really important to me and that I know have been important to others as I've talked about them. And so those are this. For me, it's talked about finding your people. And so not just your core group,
Right.
but one of the ways that I do my work, and I recognize this is a strength of mine, StrengthsFinder, is I'm a really big fan of StrengthsFinder and really knowing what are true talents that are innate to us. And for me, I am mostly sitting in the relationship building category. If folks aren't familiar with StrengthsFinder, definitely encourage the book Strengths-Based Leadership.
Cool.
You can take the inventory and take a look at that. But specifically, building relationships within and across your organization that are deep and meaningful. And I'm not talking about networking. I mean, networking, but really asking genuine questions. I am the person, I remember going to visit one of my best girlfriends in college, and we were going to hang out with some of her friends. And she told her friend, she goes, Hannah's going to ask you questions about your life. She's going to want your life story. And she actually really wants to hear it. She's not just making small talk. And people, I have found, can be really disarmed by that, but in a positive way, because we actually, to me, I think that is so important because it takes time to show care for other people. And so when we build those relationships, it helps us champion our own priorities at work. Here's the work that I am trying to do. If I have this relationship with you, understand your work and you understand mine, how can we have a symbiotic relationship, support each other? Yeah. I think it's actually some of the lessons I've learned in my own professional development in my career. It's really how we can get things done for our students. I think about, because I had a relationship with the director of financial aid at one of my previous institutions, when I had a student who was leaving the institution because of financial aid issues and wasn't able to get through to anyone at that office, because I was able to call her and say, who does he need to talk to? She was able to talk to him that afternoon. Yeah. And then really, I think building those relationships helps us be seen as good collaborators, and not in a selfish way, but again, a symbiotic relationship. And it was because I had those networks and I was seen as someone who was supportive of my colleagues. I was asked to go over and help run our Women's Resource Center, which was really awesome.
I want to underline what you're saying there, because I think it is so important. A lot of times, young women I work with, especially in the first 10 years of our careers, feel like networking is this dirty word that means being awkward at some happy hour, and it's just tremendously uncomfortable. And it involves these transactional politics of whipping out your business cards. And I want to encourage folks in the exact same way that Hannah is talking about symbiotic relationships, of seeing your community as a reflection of your strength, right? Your community, as your friends grow, as your friends gain power, success, reach, achievement, impact, whatever it might be, so too do you. And so establishing those relationships, giving and asking for their support is so critically important. And one of the skills to make that happen is something in my organizing background that we called a one-on-one meeting. Mm-hmm. And there's a video that I did on the Bossed Up YouTube channel all about the basics of how to have an effective networking meeting, how to have a one-on-one meeting that actually enables you to build those relationships in that exact way that Hannah is talking about. So it totally comes back to social justice work, right? That's the organizing background that I have. And you grow your power, you grow your impact, you grow your own influence through building authentic, symbiotic, reciprocal relationships like that. I think that's so key, but it is also a practice that can be really hard for folks at times. So practice that skill. You can flex that muscle. You can improve upon your own networking and community building skills, and check out that video on YouTube, which should be on this page if you're probably watching via our YouTube channel too.
Absolutely. I can't stress enough. And I think for us, especially in the talent management profession, we talk a lot about, and the research shows, the relationships I have right now, we might not capitalize that in terms of a recruitment perspective this year. It might be 4 years down the road, but because we have those networks, and I think because of the networks that I have as well, and there's a genuine desire for me to connect people and ideas together. Right. And so really helping people like, oh, do you know this person who's working at this institution that you're applying for? Or have you seen this professional development opportunity, this webinar, et cetera? And just helping make those connections is really just so important. And as you said, doing it in a genuine way, not in a self-serving, but that's what my mentors are talking about. Do the informational interview. I respect you. I admire your work. Can I just learn a little bit more about what you do?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Go ahead.
So, so let's see. I think there's that, and then going along with that, I've also learned over the years to tell my story and to tell it in a strategic and in a consistent and authentic way. So whether that is through social media networks, that's how every time I send an email, every time I show up at a meeting, every time I run a meeting, I am telling my story of the work that I do. And I read a wonderful article recently that said the best networking you can do is to be really darn good at your job.
Yeah. I love that.
Because then other people will say, oh, you know who you should talk to? You should talk to Hannah. You should talk to Emily over at Bossed Up. And so really the work that we do is part of our story. And I think the other things, it's part of what we did at the University of Arizona. We created a video that we were planning to use just for training efforts for our own internal student staff. And we partnered with a student who was a film major. He had the expertise on how to make the film. We had some of the messages, but we really let him have creative license. And he put this video together, Emily, that it's 9 minutes. It's us talking about definitions for 3, and then we hear from students for about 6 minutes. And it's all about, how does our work matter? Why does social justice relate to the residence halls? That video was used around the world.
Wow.
It just totally blew our minds, that it's like, oh, something that we can do that we thought was just for us, but could really speak to other people. And it really helped tell the story of the University of Arizona. We had a large, a hashtag that we used while there. And I thought it was just a hashtag. It was hashtag UA Sojo. Sojo short for social justice.
Sure.
And I thought people were just using it on social media. And then I found that the student staff, they were putting it on their wing decorations. It was showing up there, and people were actually saying it to each other more than not. And one of the students told me, he goes, well, do you know about UA Nojo? And I said, no, what are you talking about? He goes, when something is not socially just, but we actually don't know what to say in the moment, we can just say, hey, you ain't no Joe. And it became part of the culture.
It's awesome.
It was awesome. And so telling that story, I think, is just so important. And that
yeah, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I just have to say, first of all, Jackie, our amazing content manager at Bossed Up, hooked you and I up, and now I see why she knew I was gonna love you. We are reading from the same books, I think, because telling your story is the other piece of how to actually be authentic connections. And of course, I have a video on that as well on our YouTube channel, all about the art of the story of self, which comes out of Marshall Ganz's research from the University of from Harvard University, the Kennedy School of Government, where I studied with him on a course called People, Power, and Change, and being able to articulate who you are, where you come from, how you relate to others, and why you can achieve things together, right? The story that inspires action is so critically important. So public narrative or our own personal narrative is, I think, the building blocks of relationships.
I think it's both the building blocks of relationships. Only the other thing that I'm really struck with is it really helps us tie into that sense of agency, to be able to say, I am struggling with X, Y, and Z, and I can recognize that it's about something bigger than myself.
Yeah.
It's that is huge. And to give, I think when people are able to express themselves, I have some activist friends who really do some incredible work around the use of art and storytelling in order to help find liberation for the self and help create community, and the power that has for people. I mean, everyone has to find their own way to tell a story, but it's just so critically important, because the other reality is, if we don't tell our stories, the rest of the world is going to tell it for us. I was a mass media major here at Michigan, so that's really what frames a lot of my work. And I think about systems of oppression and who tells the stories. Absolutely.
So true. Amen. I could just be here all day with you, but unfortunately, I'm looking at the time. We don't actually have all day. So I know you've got a lot of great content over there that you've been thinking of and preparing. Why don't we share one final words of wisdom, lessons learned, something that you think these ladies in our community just must know about you, about your transitions over the years, over your career path, or or I don't know, something that, anything. Grab bag, free for all.
Yes, grab bag. So I'm going to do a grab bag. Just a couple of quick final thoughts. If you are someone who is thinking that the higher education field might be right for you, specifically in terms of student affairs, couple of recommendations. Many positions at a higher level are going to require a master's degree, and not even some at the mid-level. So really recommend going and getting that master's degree in college student personnel or higher ed student affairs as quickly as possible. It doesn't have to be immediately after undergrad, but do it soon, because it is going to be important for your career advancement. I think the other thing is really work at different campuses. If you stay at one place, and it's the same if you stay at one organization or one company, you only know one model of doing things, and we have so much to learn from other ways of being out there. So those are my two, I think, real student affairs pieces that I wanted to share. The final thing that I've been reflecting a lot on really for the past 2 years, and that is kind of becoming my mantra, is we just need to create the space for people to be able to bring their authentic selves, and not in a way that's like, let me be there for you and let me be the one to create that space. But it's truly just when we are struggling, whether it's because we've made a mistake in our personal life, at work, because we are dealing with issues that are bigger than us, just let people tell their own story. And so I think that's something that students and staff have told me over the years is something that they appreciate that I bring, is I really just try and listen. Don't always try and fix things, but can just affirm what you're feeling is real. Even if I haven't had that experience, I can see the impact that it's having on you and it may have had on others. And so if you just want to talk, first thing we have to do is get our feelings out there before we can move to how do I get beyond this. So for me, it's just so critically important to create the space and not make it about us, but just have that space for another person to tell their story.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Hannah. And on that note, if you are struggling, keep in mind that there are safe spaces out there for you to bring your whole self to the table. One that just comes to mind is Bossed Up, of course. That's really what we're here to do, is to help create a community of courage where women can come together, bring their whole lives to the table, and strategize on how we're going to get to that next level, whatever that means for you, right? Getting clear on the life that we would want to live, and then crafting an action plan for making it happen, not in isolation, but with a community of support every step of the way. So if you haven't already, go to bossedup.com, type in that little email address into our little forum, and you will join our online courage community. You can also check us out in person at our upcoming Bossed Up Power Hour events that happen in DC and New York. And soon, thanks to our new cohort of ambassadors who we are onboarding this week nationwide, we are going to have, and internationally actually. I forget about our amazing Bossed Up Canadian crowd, so go Canada. But we are going to be hosting Bossed Up Power Hours all over the place pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. And of course, our flagship training program, Bossed Up Bootcamp for Women Navigating Career Transition, is an intensive weekend-long retreat where you can really get all the tools you need across work, love, and wellness to craft a sustainable career path. So Hannah, thank you so much for your brilliant words of wisdom, for sharing some of your valuable time with us today. And I have to say thank you to Jackie, our content manager, for helping make this connection, right? On that very same StrengthsFinders theme. I love teaming up with rad, bossed up women like you all the time. So thank you again for being here.
I could not agree more, Emily. I really respect the work that Bossed Up is doing. It is so needed for women in our world. So please, thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you, and keep up the good work. Ladies, I want to share my appreciation for you tuning in today. As a reminder, Hannah and I are still on Twitter. We would still love to connect with you, so don't forget to give us your thoughts. Use that hashtag CareerCrush, tweet at BossedUpORG or Emily Aries, or to reach Hannah, you can check her out on Twitter at Hannah, Hannah, Lozon, Lozon. Thanks, Hannah, and thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.